Welcome to the VEX Robotics Competition referee training videos, designed for both referees and teams. This is Chapter 6, Pinning and Trapping. Pinning and trapping rules can often be sources of confusion for referees and teams. They can sometimes be more subjective, and it is difficult to categorize every possible type of robot-on-robot interaction. The examples and explanations given in this video should help teams and referees to develop a better idea of what trapping is and what it is not. Let's begin with the relevant definition. A robot is trapping if it has restricted an opposing robot into a small, confined area of the field, approximately the size of one foam field tile or less, and has not provided an avenue for escape. Trapping can be direct, such as pinning an opponent to a field perimeter wall, or indirect, such as preventing a robot from escaping from a corner of the field. Direct trapping is what used to be called pinning, a robot holding another robot against a field element, such as a wall or goal, and preventing them from getting away. However, trapping can also be indirect. This robot is effectively restricted to a small area of the field, but without the aggressive contact associated with a traditional pin. A small area in this case being one foam field tile or less. Remember, a robot does not actually have to be contacting its opponent for trapping to occur, so long as the opponent cannot break out of the confined area and play the rest of their match. Robots which have expanded horizontally in an effort to obstruct the field, aka wallbots, would normally not be in violation of trapping, as they typically are not restricting opposing robots to a small area of the field. In all forms of trapping, there is a responsibility on the part of the robot being trapped to make a visible and active effort towards breaking free. Simply sitting stationary will not result in a trapping violation. In VRC Changeup, there are many different areas where a robot could potentially become trapped. If a robot is near a goal, with an opponent strafing side to side behind them, referees will need to ask themselves, is the offensive robot intending to be there, or are they actively trying to get out? If they're in the act of scoring, they're probably not trying to get out, and it is probably not a trapping call. Now let's take a look at Rule G15, which explains how trapping should be handled during a match. A robot may not trap an opposing robot for more than 5 seconds during the driver-controlled period. Once a referee has identified that trapping has begun, they should provide a clear verbal and visual cue to all teams that a pin count has begun. This means that you should use your hand to count, gesture to the violation if possible, and count loudly and clearly. When teams notice a referee counting down, they will usually back off sooner than the full 5 count, and the count effectively ends up acting as a warning to all teams. Also, it's important for referees to be assertive when calling a trapping count. Referees are sometimes hesitant to start counting until after the trap has already been clearly established, which can turn a 5-second count into 8 or 9 seconds of actual trapping. This is one of the most common sources of frustration for teams and new referees. A direct trap, often referred to as a pin, should be easy to identify. Just watch for a robot stuck between a field element and an opponent robot not moving. An indirect trap may be more difficult to identify, but it's still important to watch for. So, if you see a robot stuck in a particular area with an opponent strafing side to side in front of them, they're probably being trapped. If you're still not sure, a verbal warning is a good start. It could be as simple as saying, "Let them out of there." The next section of the rule states, a trap is officially over once the trapping robot has moved away and the robots are separated by at least 2 feet, approximately 1 foam tile. After ending a trap, a robot may not trap the same robot again for a duration of 5 seconds. If a team does trap the same robot again, the count will resume from where it left off when the trapping robot initially backed off. Again, be sure to be loud and clear when communicating that this has occurred. There should be no confusion that the offending team has either not satisfied their 5 seconds of backing away, or has not backed away far enough. This is a very commonly misunderstood part of the call. If you wait for the aggressor to back a full field tile away before even stopping the count, there should be no confusion. Then, once you stop the count, take a mental note of the time on the field timer and keep an eye on the aggressor. Defensive teams will often ride the very edge of this limit. This is totally legal, but only if they wait the full 5 seconds and only if they move the full field tile away. Now, there are 2 subtle details regarding trapping that are worth mentioning. First, if an opposing robot blocks a team from moving away and breaking a direct trap, then the count can be ended. This is related to G14, which states that you cannot cause an opponent to violate a rule. In this case, you cannot force a robot to trap another robot. And lastly, but perhaps most importantly, if your robot stops working for any reason, you are still responsible for its actions. This means that if you're in the act of trapping, lose control of your robot, and your opponent is still unable to break free, then a trapping count or violation would still occur. That being said, the opposite is also true. If your robot malfunctions while being trapped and you stop trying to escape, then the count should stop. This could mean a dead battery, an overheated motor, or even a radio disconnect. In any case, your robot is no longer actively trying to break free. It would be silly to penalize someone for trapping a robot that can't even move. Sometimes, when a trapping count occurs, drivers will try and show the referee that they're not touching their controls. This is actually counter to the definition of trapping as explained in this video. If you're the one being trapped and you're not touching the controls, then you're essentially telling the referee to stop counting because you're no longer trying to break free. On the other hand, if you're the one doing the trapping, it doesn't matter whether you're touching your controls or not, because you're still responsible for the actions of your own robot. Trapping is one of the most difficult calls to make in the VEX Robotics competition, but it is necessary to ensure a fair and offensive game. As such, referees need to be vigilant and confident when watching for these violations. They also need to clearly communicate when warning teams and counting out loud to deter potential violations. That's all for Chapter 6. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out the other chapters in this referee training series.